Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, possibly the most crucial, but also most overlooked work in progress underway for Joey McGuire and the Red Raider football team this offseason. We investigate next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. And today we are diving into a defensively focused conversation. We'll take a listen coming up in just a moment to new defensive coordinator Shill Wood talking about an effort with one particular aspect of his defense that I feel like is maybe even going a little bit overlooked, but could actually be the determining factor as it relates to the broader conversation we'll have today. And that is project defense. We know there were additions made offensively that you're looking to hopefully help you get into a championship contending category in the Big 12 Conference, but I think the majority of the attention paid to what you added defensively, an overhaul there, not just including players, but obviously a different defensive coordinator. And we'll tie back around as well to a change you've got with that support staff as well as far as the secondary coach is concerned. But the overall effort to almost overnight improve the state of that group, Chris, is underway. And we'll get into in just a moment some things I know you've been looking into because there's sort of a sweet spot nationally on where you need to be landing as far as some of these metrics and rankings if you want to be in a contender kind of category, right?
Definitely so. I think there's a level of improvement and consistency that you must achieve really on both sides of the ball. I know we're talking defense right now that, because 126th in total defense last year and 121st in scoring defense. Not getting you to where you want to go. I don't care how many
points.
That
is not the sweet spot score. I'm referencing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Surprise.
And one of the things that I think there's a lot of opinion about your and other portal classes out there. I think there's different ways to go about who you want to bring in. And sometimes there's a mixed bag to where they check both categories of what I'm about to get into. More often than not, most of your transfer portal guys, and we'll talk about the defense right now, are and were very, very productive players. Were at their previous stop. This is why you were attracted to them. This is there's one case that I may suggest checks the box of the other category, but these were all starters, all conference types, filling up the stat sheet type guys with measurables and all that in almost every case. I mean, Cole Wisniewski had, what did he have, like 8 interceptions in his last full year of playing? Lee Hunter's second team All Big 12, and on it goes. We know the Romello Height and David Bailey with the pressures and then this and that, because there's a lot of portal classes out there that you build one side of the ball or whatever, and you go get the very highly ranked high school prospect that's been sitting on campus somewhere and hasn't done anything yet, and you're playing the potential game. We can change it, and they go all in on these things. They go get the former 5 stars and all that stuff, and yet they haven't done it. That is not what you did here. You majored in going to get productivity, like as in last year, and in Wisniewski's case, obviously there was an injury last year, whatever. But that's what really gives me hope that your defense will be as advertised and a lot better than last year, because there is serious production just months ago from when these guys last suited up wherever they were. And it's just a matter of bringing them together and trying to get them to play together and with the new scheme for Coach Wood and all those things. But a lot of production brought in here, and some of them have more than 1 year to be here, which fires me up.
Yeah, that's a nice little piece of frosting on top of what you're getting cake-wise whenever you can get some time, hopefully, to stick with them and continue to see them develop. I know that from a PR or marketing standpoint, you're thinking, all right, change with the defensive coordinator plus all these new names added to the mix. Well, it'll be great because we're all learning together and it's a blank slate overall and it's just a fresh start. But I'm really wondering, Chris, myself, as a fan, about the reality of that and maybe compounding some of the difficulty actually by having that change in leadership and such an influx of guys that we expect to play big roles and hopefully make big impacts. I think in that situation, you'd like to have something to point to as far as this is the standard or this is the culture, this is what has been in place, but there's no way getting around the fact that you're making a change for a reason there. So you can take it and run whichever way you want, I guess, glass half full, or is it a glass half empty kind of conversation? I hate to go one extreme or the other, but I'm thinking there's got to be some added difficulty, man, with trying to get in and implement some things as a new leader, a DC over a staff. And you do have some carryover with that staff, which is worth mentioning, but at the same time, trying to juggle so many new things personnel-wise.
Yeah, that's why I think that large in part in the spring, and again, some of these guys, dinged up, and you've got some of your own guys that were dinged up, and you're kind of holding some things out. You're trying to introduce new scheme and all that. I really think, and I hate using this word because this isn't, I can't think of a better phrase for it, but simplify. Again, players over plays. And so if you've got really good athleticism and speed and guys up front and on the back end, you don't have to trick it up a bunch with, like the word exotic, like with, hey man, we because I think that was part of the problem last year. If I'm being honest, I think that Tim is a really good defensive coach. He's proven this. Tim DeRuyter was. And they were pretty young or inexperienced, I should say, in a lot of places. And they felt like they had depth. It was just inexperienced depth. And there wasn't a lot of like quality. You don't have a lot of all conference types running around there, right? Virtually none. And I think that they tried to, with a lot of the sim pressures and a lot of the different things that he's always done. And I think some of those guys had a hard time with it. And some busts and things like that. Okay, so I say all that to say.
First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on all the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet hits. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to really win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
I say all that to say that Coach Wood comes in with, I think, much more depth and experience and all that, but we don't have any experience together. We don't have any depth of playing a game together. And I think that he's probably gone about it as in, let's just not get too crazy here with what we're trying to get done. Let's play really hard and let's just go kick ass. And I think they've probably did a lot of that in the spring to where the offense sure noticed. But you're not, and you can add some bells and whistles as you go, especially during the season and whatnot. But the best when you've really cracked the code is when you can theoretically rush 4 without blitzing and still get pressure, because then it's a party on the back end and then everybody's having fun because and so I'll be interested to see kind of what this looks like, what it looked like after spring and how crazy you get or how much he tries to throw onto this deal when you get into August and the games start, because I don't know if he necessarily has to, and that's certainly a positive.
KISS, keep it simple, shield. I think that's what it means. And I'm thinking, you said the word. You said the password, exotic. I'm always frightened by this term on the college level. It ain't just Tim DeRuyter. We could go back through several defensive coordinators. Unfortunately, we've got the list to do it with here in the LBK, but you hear preseason, fall camp, spring camp talk about we want to be exotic. We could be versatile, multiple looks, etc. I think I've seen far more often than not that not go so well as opposed to really being able to pull it off. But much like we kind of talked about with the offensive coordinator, I think on an episode last week, you're not wanting to outthink the room. And I guess that can be applied to the DCs here or there. You want to fit your personnel, right? Or best play to your personnel and put them in the best position to have success. I know it's much easier said than done, but yeah, if you could simplify anything, I think that's always a great move, especially maybe for a new guy being in place as far as the leadership is concerned.
Well, that's what, I'll go back to, remember the, hey, man, I'm a man, I'm 40 speech that Mike Gundy was giving that one day in Stillwater. Mike Leach is in the other locker room, and he's going through his own big-time post-game press conference, and the next day you would come back and you would make a change and remove Lyle Sedensich from his post as DC, and you would move Ruffin McNeil in. And Ruffin McNeil would always say, they played a lot of base, and he would always say, clear eyes equal fast legs, but it was about the way you did it. It was about playing harder and faster and all the things. And in some ways, it's not what people want to hear. Like I think fans generally, they like exotic. They're like, okay, my coach is smarter than yours. We're going to do all this crazy stuff. We're going to reinvent the wheel and all that. But I would take really good players and just a bunch of guys that can win one-on-one matchups and say, my dudes are better than yours. Let's go. And I'm not saying that's what Coach Wood will be able to do, but I just am wondering if you're leaning into that just a bit, because their defense at Houston last year was pretty darn salty. And then they had some, as you've seen, some pieces on the back end that have since transferred out. One high profile transfer that went to LSU. You had one of your D tackles at Houston last year that did come with Coach Wood to Texas Tech and stuff. So I'm all about, because if you listen to some of the stuff they put out, he talks a lot like Joey does. This is just about effort. It's not. We don't have any reason to bust a coverage. So let's just be really good around the edge. Let's be sure tacklers on the interior, all the things, and let's just win a bunch of one-on-one matchups simultaneously. And you've not been able to do that consistently enough over the last decade. You've had guys that could. Tyree Wilson comes to mind. Jordan Brooks comes to mind. All the things, but you've got a collection of folks now that I think you feel like you can deploy that it could make things very interesting up front and again on the back end. And I'm looking forward to watching that process play out, because that's this topic. What we are talking about right now is exactly what gives me hope on getting to Arlington. If this is not drastically better, and I think that it can be, you're not going to Arlington.
Yeah. Boil it down for simplicity's sake. I think you're 1,000% right. And I want to get to in just a minute, maybe the most overlooked, but one of the most key determining factors in aiding in that defensive effort and aiding in the efforts to try to get to Arlington could be on the aforementioned back end of your defense. We'll get to a thought from Shill Wood on what you're trying to do secondary wise, because it wasn't just the DC leadership you had a change with, but replacing a position coach as well in the secondary. We'll get to that in just a minute. But before we get to it, Chris, I'm curious to hear if you could give me something as a fan to latch onto. I like numbers. I like lists. I like rankings. I want to be able to easily follow them and see, are we warm? Are we cold? Are we near? Are we far? So I know you've been looking into some things really on both sides of the ball, but defensively, for the sake of this conversation, that I guess bears out to be pretty consistent over the years. If we're talking about contenders within a league or nationally?
So I looked this up. This is just a snapshot at last year with a newly expanded playoff and everything like that. I looked at the 12 playoff, and we touched on this briefly in the mailbag, I think that we did late last week. But I looked at the 12 playoff teams, and then I looked at BYU and I looked at Iowa State because they were either in the Big 12 title game or had a great gripe to be in there or on the cusp of an at-large bid in the playoffs. And I also just pulled up University of Houston for purposes of our conversation because we're talking defense and you just hired their coordinator and the like. Okay, so of the 12 playoff teams and then BYU and Iowa State, these are all teams, okay, so there's 14 total there. These are all teams that had at least 10 wins. These are double-digit win seasons, all 14 of them. There's only 2 of them that only had 10 wins. But and that's Tennessee and Clemson, which they both were playoff teams, obviously, and then would lose in the first round. Other than, let's see, so Boise State, playoff team, and then Clemson, they are the outlier to what I'm talking about here. And Clemson, and Boise State are this wasn't the norm. But because I was told at some point last year, they're like, man, if you want to win a conference championship or you want to be a playoff team, this, which is kind of one and the same type category, you got to be top 40 on both sides of the ball and total and scoring and all these different things, not just offense. And again, one side doesn't have to carry it, but you've got to be consistent and balanced enough to where that's just what the numbers have shown. I'm sure exceptions to the rule here, which a few of them I'm about to get into. But Clemson was 69th in total defense and 42nd in scoring defense. So they were an outlier, but their offense was good enough and their quarterback was good enough, and there were still some gripes there. Boise State was 60th in total defense and 37th in scoring defense. Okay. Arizona State was a good example too. They were 38th in total defense, 37th in scoring defense. So you see that they're not just world beaters, but it's pretty salty, But Notre Dame, so I'll give total and scoring, but Notre Dame 11-4, Texas 3-3, Ohio State was 1-1, Penn State 7-8, Oregon 15-16, Georgia 30-20. Georgia, they were a bit down here compared to this. Indiana 2-13, SMU 26-32, Tennessee 6-7. But then we get to BYU. They were 13th in total defense, 18th in scoring defense. Iowa State, again, they didn't make it. They were 51st and then 41st. So, but and they had 11 wins on the season. And here you are at 126th and 121st, and you're sitting there at 8 wins, hoping for a 9th one with a chance to get to a 10th one and the like. Houston, they were 25th in total defense and 40th in scoring defense. And I think they won 4 games last year. So that's how bad their offense was. Yeah. So they were but it just shows you that there's going to have to be some data that comes along with your improvement that it's consistent. And I'm not looking at turnover margin. I'm not looking at total sacks. I'm looking at how many yards and how many points you're giving up on average. And that kind of tells a bit of a story. Yes, turnovers need to be a part of it, and margin does. Can't turn it over on offense, need to create more on defense. It goes without saying. But just trying to give people an idea of how far you need to come here, but you can. And some of this is who you're playing against.
Sure.
But that's also who you're playing against this year. You're playing against a lot of really good quarterbacks. Everybody will tell you out there, the Big 12 has the best collection of returning quarterbacks in the country. Now, you don't have to play Josh Hoover. You don't have to play Sawyer Robertson. You don't have to play Rocco Becht. I'm trying to off the top of my head. So there's some of these guys that you don't have to play, but you're gonna have to play Sam Levitt. You're gonna have to play Avery Johnson. You're gonna have to play Jalen Daniels and all that. So anyway, it's an interesting view of it, but this is kind of where you need to go. I don't think you have to be top 5 in defense. You just need to be hovering around or better than top 40.
Man, that kind of territory would feel like a top 5 compared to where you have been before, where you have been recently, and where you hope to avoid being again. So break the charts out, everyone. Get your markers color-coded or however you like. And now we've got something to shoot for and monitor as we roll into and through the season. But before we get out of here, Chris, I wanted to get a couple of thoughts from you because on this particular group, because I feel like this is a group that is going to be as key in determining what happens defensively. And if we think that will be key in determining what happens with the team overall, then obviously you can apply it to all of the above. And that is the changes that you've made in your defensive secondary, which does include a change in leadership as far as a coaching change there. But what a handful of additions as far as personnel on the field. And this was a spot where you were really hurting last year. You weren't making big plays. You were obviously going backwards far too often. Plenty of that had to do with what's happening up front. But I guess the overlooked part of this to me is maybe tied into how much attention your additions up front defensively have gotten, and deservedly so. But let's not forget about the rehabilitation project going on the back end of that defense. And I want to go back to spring camp before we get into this and take a listen to defensive coordinator Shill Wood talking about that effort and bringing together those numbers, those new faces, those new personalities to try to combine into an effective and impactful secondary. First, today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You're going to love the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Take a listen to defensive coordinator Shill Wood talking about that effort and bringing together those numbers, those new faces, those new personalities to try to combine into an effective and impactful secondary.
Coverage is coverage to a certain extent. So different systems, terminology is different, but certain structural parts of a quarters concept, a cover two, a 3D are going to carry over. And there'll be a lot of similarities on how those things are coached and played from maybe system to system. I think our coaches, Coach Green, Coach McBath, have done a great job of helping our guys learn their assignments, learn the terminology. Maybe for some of our returners, for some of the new guys, there might be a little bit different way that we're coaching the technique or a key progression or whatever the case may be. They've done a great job of learning how we're playing it here, the terminology, and then you hit the nail on the head, the communication in particular at the third level of the defense with motion adjustments, formation adjustments. Those are the things that sometimes take a little bit longer to develop and get really confident in, but I think our guys have done a great job, and a huge part of that is their want to in terms of extra film work, just students of the game and their desire to really want to learn that assignment, so they've got a lot of confidence in what they're doing. And that's, I think, led to them playing with a lot of confidence on the practice field.
Chris, I'd love to have a good enough pass rush where they could put me and you back there to cover, but I don't know if we're that good up front just yet. And there's nothing more, man, just devastating to one's spirits than, say, a busted coverage. So they got all kinds of big challenges on their hands and trying to come together with the secondary. And like I said, that includes new leadership from a position standpoint with the departure of Marcel Yates.
You were mentioned rankings and everything. I mean, we realize here you gave up 308 yards a game in the air last year on average. How many we touched on this as it was happening, but how many quarterbacks like won their conference player of the week award after they played you throughout last season? I think there was like 5.
Too many.
Yeah. Very, very, and like you were 132nd in the country there, 308 yards a game. Oklahoma State, 131. Let's see, West Virginia, 125. I mean, Mike Gundy had to take a pay cut, fire a bunch of people. Like, hey, man, may not be working for you here. Obviously, we know West Virginia, who Neil Brown made a decision mid-season because this was not going well at the coordinator spot, and then ultimately now he's working at UT and everything, and they moved on from him. And yet, West Virginia, no big time season or anything. Oklahoma State was 0-9, and yet you were sitting here at 6-3. Boy, luckily you had a competent and very consistent offense, because you were just putrid on the back end. Some of which there's some injuries. Some of this is youth. But again, I think there was some confusion at times too, and the busted coverage aspect and the like. But I think we've talked a lot about the 5 defensive linemen that you've added, but you haven't really. I mean, Bryce Pollock, obviously Cole Wisniewski, Terrian Grant, Dante Balfour, and Amir Boyd Matthews. Sorry, there was a one name I was gonna, because there's the hyphen in there, throwing me off. But you added a lot of 6'2", 6'3" into your secondary. Darcel is now coaching them. Phenomenal guy, that I think a lot of. And he played about as good here of defense as anybody ever has. And he was a 2nd-round pick for the Broncos, was Darcel, and that's when you had a really good offense, but the defense was coming along with it, and that's why that 07, 08 like time frame was, really, really fun, big time seasons when you were winning a lot. Like what, 20 wins over that 2-year span, I guess it was something like along those lines. So, and again, you still have Mo Horn. Macho Stevenson is going to grow up and be better for it. I just think he got thrown into things way before he was ready. A guy like Terrian Grant will be allowed to. He's one of the former 5-star guys that you're taking on promise and potential, but you're also saying we don't like, you can ease into this deal, or like we can ease you into this deal. We want you long term for the next 2 or 3 years. But some of these other guys, these are dudes that can help you right now. But Bryce Pollock, he might be. He's a junior. He's got 2 years. He could be somebody that isn't here for that second year, and not because he transferred out, but because he forgoes his senior year. That's how good he might be. We'll see.
I just hope this doesn't turn into, I don't know if you're familiar with this meme or not, but I hope it doesn't turn into something similar to the meme where you've got a beautiful sketch pencil drawing of a stallion at the beginning or at the end, and then it turns into like what a 3-year-old would do with a caterpillar or something. Looks like a 4-legged, 5-legged camel. The front end, I can imagine looking really shiny, and possibly early on, because I think you're going to be able to outdude some dudes up front. And you may have some of that going on the back end too, but I don't mean to diminish the complexity of trying to compete at the line of scrimmage. So all due respect to what they're being asked to do up front, but I just feel like it's a different beast within the secondary, and may take a little bit more time. So we'll see. And by the way, I mean, just going back to what we started with, that pass rush sure has made a lot of DBs better DBs, right? Whenever the quarterback is under major duress.
You don't have to cover as long. But what you have is you have big and physical and athletic on the back end. I mean, do people realize you're going to have a safety out there named Cole Wisniewski that's 6'4", 220? I mean, that could be a defensive end. That could be a linebacker. No, he's basically going to play strong safety for you. I mean, and he had, like I said, he had like 8 interceptions in 2023. He's a very, very good tackler. his coach is still whining and moaning about losing him up there in the Dakotas, right? We remember this. These are some of the players, though, that I think that you will start to really grasp. Boy, they did really good here. Talked a lot about defensive line, talked a lot about offensive line and tackle, and, got a receiver and got a tight end. Boy, and maybe it's because you added so many DBs here because I think they feel like at the end of the day, I think that they feel like Darcel was like, I've got 5 starting corners. I mean, last year, what was life like when Braylon Lux was hurt? Uh-oh.
Challenging.
Like, oh boy. We would even talk in terms of, is he the most important guy on your team or on the defense?
Yeah.
Because he was, whenever he was out, it was like, man. And so I think they tried to fix that. And now they don't have a Braylon Lux problem, which he wasn't a problem. It's the fact that there was only one of him. Good luck in Cincinnati, Braylon. But now you've got multiple options and you've got some versatility and you've still got some of your young pieces. You lost a few, but you've got some of your young pieces that you can develop and why they didn't go get another safety in the portal, because Chapman Lewis is going to miss some time here, but you're going to start to learn about Malik Esquera and Peyton Morgan and Oliver Miles, and there's some young pieces from a DB standpoint that have a lot of good football ahead of them. This is the equivalent of your Eddie Smith, your Charles Anderson, your Chetta Ofili, your Dylan Spencer on that defensive line. I mean, there's a group coming, but luckily you don't have to go, hey man, here's the wheel, steer it, and please don't run into a building or run into a ditch or whatever. You've got some time.
Yeah, what's going on in the secondary is as crucial of a work in progress effort as you've got going on really anywhere with your team as you prepare for the fall. So certainly something I'm sure we'll be swinging back around to and paying attention to along the way whenever fall camp does arrive. Chris, appreciate the time and insight as always, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you back for the next round.
Sounds good, man. We'll appreciate it. Love chopping it up. You know what? And we've never really done this, but if you have anything you want us to get into more of on some of these times in the off season or whatever, man, speak up. Well, we would happy to entertain any and all ideas as it relates to just kind of it's list season out there. So if you got, I know there's a million of them. If you got any interesting lists out there, I'd love to hear some feedback on, are you miffed? Are you excited? Are you peeved? Are you agree? Or you disagree? We'll chop it up here. That's what this thing's for.
Be careful what you wish for, but you heard it there. You heard it there from Chris Level. All right.
Yes.
Appreciate you guys for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers for being out there every day. It's right there in the title. And shout out to the Matador Mob as well. Hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with a one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.